All right. And sitting down with us on the podcast today, you may know him as JR. He is John Rodenberg, sports director at TSN 1200. John, how are you doing today, sir?
Awesome, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, Everyone's, safe, healthy, all that good stuff in your area town right now.
Hang on. Yeah, all good right now. All good in
There,
the hood. It's Friday, so we're feeling good. The weekend is here.
yeah.
And a nice 7-game road trip ahead for the Sens and lots of late nights.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll have to be getting some good sleep for that because it'll be a couple late nights as they do their little West Coast swing there. But I mean, that's probably a good place to start right away as well, too, right? Like for the Senators, there's, early in the season, but three sort of main storylines have kind of emerged at this point. You've got, the Chuck Norris line, which has been looking pretty good with the young lads up there. Nick Paul is suddenly looking like a bona fide NHL player at this point. And then you've got Nikita Zaitsev, who out of nowhere has gone from almost a punchline to one of their more serviceable defensemen. So out of those three, which one has been maybe the most pleasant surprise for you so far in this season?
To be honest with you, from what my expectations were to the reality 4 games into the season, I'd have to say Zaitsev, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I could have seen a scenario to start the season in which I wouldn't have even had him in my top 6.
Mm-hmm.
I would have, I would have tried a couple of the new guys that they brought in, Goodbranson and Brown, and gotten a look at Zub, and because I kind of felt like I know all I need to know about Zaitsev. I've seen that movie more than enough the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But man alive, he's been really good. Like there's no, now it's still early days. I keep cautioning it. All my comments I make, I say it's early days. But that one is out of the blue for me. He's been a really good surprise.
Yeah, no kidding. And not only is he pacing the Sens in points right now, but he's third in the entire league in defensive scoring. And that is a headline I would not have bet any amount of money on that I'd be saying at any point of the season this year.
Yeah, maybe this is the time, though, if you're Pierre Dorion, you got to sell high.
Yeah.
I mean, his value may never be higher in his entire time here in Ottawa than right now, 4 games into this season.
Yeah, I don't see the whatever it is 70-point pace that he's on right now keeping up over a full season, but we'll take it while we can get it at least. Right?
Exactly. Well, and they've needed it, quite frankly, because the rest of the defense has been a bit of a hot mess for the most part. Shabbat was great in the first game, has been pretty uneven since, and in the game on Thursday had a couple of bad turnovers, was certainly not his best night. But I mean, we know what he is, and he's certainly the cornerstone defenseman. And I mean, Riley actually has been kind of decent either as well compared to how he ended last year. But the rest of it has been, Goodbranson's had some moments. Brown and Coburn in the game on Thursday were just not very good at all. So Zaitsev has been a bright light in what has been a pretty uneven position group.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, even on that note of Thursday night, it probably wasn't just the defense that wasn't looking the greatest the other night against the Jets, right? It was a fairly ugly game to watch, and obviously score was a little bit lopsided and probably could have been a little bit even worse. But was it nice at least to see a little bit of that pushback at the end of the game, even though the game was out of reach, seeing a little bit of friskiness out of the players to show that, hey, we might not be, the greatest team in the world on paper, but you're not just going to walk in here and push us around and all that. Was it nice to see that out of such a young group?
I'll say yes. My partner, Sean Simmer, who I work with in the morning on TSN 1200, would call that junior hockey mentality and doesn't think it does anything. That doesn't send any messages and doesn't make a hill of beans difference in the next game. I don't mind, it's nice to see the players still engaged at the end of a quite frankly, just not very good performance at all, that at least late in the third period, some of them at least were emotionally engaged in the game, but I don't know that in any way it sets any tones for the following game or whatever. They got a lot of their bigger things to fix after the game on Thursday.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a lot has been made about some of the decisions that the front office has made as far as, okay, do we let the young kids play, or just the slew of sort of veteran, I don't know how you want to describe it, placeholder almost sort of players that they did sign in the off season. Sens fans seem to be split almost 50-50 on, okay, well, this is taking away from a spot from a young player that we've been waiting to see versus, well, you got to insulate the kids' minutes. You can't just throw them off the deep end and hope that they swim there. In your opinion, do you think they went maybe a little bit too far as bringing in some veteran players and should be given some looks to some of those younger pups out there?
I will say that as the last couple of acquisitions, which I think, if I remember the order, was I think Austin Watson and then Derek Stepan was the one that happened just before training camp. It felt like that was a bit of, aren't there enough of those guys already? You know what I mean? Like that they had added so many of the, and sorry, I should add Paquette and Coburn then after that. So there was a lot of kind of additions toward the end where, and there was, listen, I'll give credit to a lot. There are a lot of people out there that said, like, what is with all the old guys, right? How many do you need? How many is too many? But you know, I kind of saw a little bit what they were going for. You know, that a lot was made of, you know, we're trying to insulate the young guys, not make sure that only the guys that deserve to be there playing. If you're not ready to go, there's nothing wrong with starting the next season in Belleville. You know, if there is a Belleville season. So I get that whole part of it. I guess what has become apparent to me, sort of even just a handful of games in, is that there's too many of them playing right now. Like a performance like we saw on Thursday, like a lot of those guys are pretty fringe NHL players at this point. And so while I wouldn't want to see 18, 20-year-old skaters out there, I think there has to be a fine balance. And I think they've got to mix and match here along the way. But I think last night was a pretty good indication that was too much of the same, I think, is what we saw last night. And you're going to get nights like we saw last night where that team is just totally outclassed on the night, right? That was a lot of reminders of the bad hockey we've seen the last 3 seasons.
Yeah. And, we've got 4 games under our belts right now. Already, we've got every armchair GM in the world saying, well, this is what I would do with the lineup. And, insert him, taxi squad him, blah, call this person up. But, with players like a Brannstrom, like a Brown, what is sort of the long-term outlook for them this year? Do you see them getting called up fairly shortly if this keeps up? Are they maybe a mid-season, call-up? Or do they just stay the course this whole year and it's not until we kick off training camp next year that we actually start to see them?
My thought on it all along has been, especially that as they've kept adding these veteran pieces, was that they felt like they were going to be able to deal a few of them off toward the trade deadline, or maybe at that point, even if they couldn't get anything for them, move along at that point. You know what? If Logan Brown wasn't ready to start this season with the Ottawa Senators, he should actually play some games in Belleville to start the year. If they don't think Erik Brannstrom is ready, he should start the season playing in Belleville. And thankfully, hopefully they, from their perspective, as far as their development goes, they'll be getting on the ice here in the next couple of weeks, because it's just been, they're not, you don't improve by sitting around watching, right? So they need to get out playing some games. But, in my opinion, we've seen this before where guys, and it's even starting their professional career, as much as half a season can make a huge bit of difference in a player. So I think that, as this goes on and maybe Ottawa kind of falls into where we suspected they would be, which is probably in 7th place. This has always been a year in which it's, baby steps forward, that we'll see some of these players maybe more toward the back half of the season, especially if they are able to move some of these older vets on at the trade deadline.
Yeah. A big acquisition was Matt Murray, obviously coming in this season, and early indications, 4 games in, and they've trotted him out there 4 times. So you would expect that they're probably going to lean pretty heavily on him, not only this year, but moving forward as well, too. What's sort of your early impressions of him and takeaways from those first handful of games that you've seen?
Well, I thought the first game, the first win against Toronto, I thought, he was really, really solid. Second game, yeah, not bad. It's been since then, the first goal in the game Thursday was really, really leaky. You could even say, maybe another goal or 2 are questionable at this stage. And, he's a veteran guy. He's making $6 million a year. He's brought in here to stop the puck. And I always live by the mantra, and goalies are like voodoo, right? You never know how they can turn out, but it's like, I just want them to stop the pucks. They should stop the stoppables, and then stop a few of the unstoppables, if you can. But you got to start with stopping the stoppables. In the last couple of games, it's been going a little bit sideways. Now, he did an interview after the game on Thursday in which he said Lee totally owned the first goal in the game, which was a terrible goal. But he did say, paraphrasing his comments, but it was something along the lines of, the numbers don't equate with how close I feel I am. And this is a veteran guy, right? He's been around, he's 26 years old or whatever it is. I think that at this stage he knows when he's close, and he says he's close. So at this point, we're going to have to take his word on it. That being said, I would have started Hogeberg in the game on Thursday night, to be honest with you. I mean, he was quite good last year, and I always saw this as not a 1A, 1B tandem, but I thought that Hogeberg would get his fair share of starts. I was a little bit surprised that Murray started 4 games in a row. I thought after 2 straight losses, it's the last home game before they go out on the road. Hogeberg was good last year. I thought there were lots of reasons why Hogeberg should have played last night. And I don't think if he did, they would have won the game or anything. They were going to lose the game regardless. They played poorly. Mm-hmm. But now they're in a spot where the starter has kind of gotten a little wobbly here. The backup hasn't played at all. Now they're going out on the road. So they've kind of backed themselves into a little bit of a spot here.
Yeah. And like you were saying, it's the first couple of games, it seems to be almost the ones that you think he has no chance making a save on that he ends up making them. And all of them seem to just be, he needs a bigger jersey or something. They all seem to be going right underneath his armpit, and just get him an XL or something in there, and maybe some of those get hung up in it. But I mean, what can you do? Like you say, goalies are a strange breed on the best of days. So you never know quite what you're going to get with them.
Yeah.
So Tyler Toffoli is a pretty interesting case here as well, too, because not only is he right in the middle of his Vancouver revenge tour that he seems to be going on, he's got 5 goals in the last 2 games, but he was one that it recently sort of came out that Ottawa was really heavily targeting him to try and bring him in. And it was, once it became apparent he was going to Montreal, that they sort of focused back in on Dadonov there. And again, you're a little bit more plugged in than we are here. Do you think that was more so Toffoli choosing the destination of I like the setup in Montreal better, or was it that Ottawa maybe wasn't offering the right amount of term or money, or have any of those little details sort of come out as far as how those negotiations went?
I haven't heard that part of it, to be honest with you. I can only if you look at the details of the 2 contract of the contract that Dadonov signed, because that's kind of the comparable, right? It seems like if they were in on Toffoli takes the Montreal offer, then all of a sudden Dadonov signs in Ottawa. It kind of stands to reason if the stories are true that they were in on Toffoli first. Well, he got, it was a 4-year contract he signed in Montreal, and it was a 3-year deal for Dadonov here, that maybe Ottawa just didn't want to go to the 4th year. Right. One of my big things that I've been watching during this rebuild, and one of the issues I had with the Colin White contract, is I'm a big believer, especially when they have kind of dug themselves out from a lot of the cap troubles that they have, is the most valuable thing you have is cap space. And part of all that is term, and not overcommitting too long to players who are not your core players, I think is a huge part of that. So if they evaluated Tyler Toffoli as somebody that they wanted, but they saw him as a 3-year stand-in, while the young guys kind of come up and eventually kind of bump him down, you don't want to go to that 4th year, because that 4th year is blocking somebody behind. You're paying, I think his contract ends up being $4.25 million. Right. So they paid a little bit more to Dadonov, but they're committed to a year less. So that's the way, if I kind of read the tea leaves a little bit, that's what I think is the difference. I think he would have, he played with the 67s, very popular by all accounts. He's got lots of people here in town that he still knows. So I don't think it was an anti-Ottawa thing. I think at the end of the day, it was probably the extra year that Montreal was willing to give him.
Yeah. Shifting focus from Ottawa just to the Canadian division in general here. In the early part of this year, who has impressed you the most so far? Whatever it is, 4 or 5 games in for everyone.
Montreal. That's the easy answer, right? But from the first game when they played Toronto, right, they should have won that game. Mm-hmm. So they should be sitting here right now. So they are 4-0-2, I believe, at this point, or 3-0-2. I can't remember what it is. I don't think they haven't lost a game in regulation. I know that, but they're scoring goals like crazy. They're just, right down the incredible depth. They've at least for now answered all the issues about size or whatever. We'll see how it all plays out as the season goes on in the playoffs. But I don't, everybody, and I became a big Nick Suzuki fan during the playoff thing. That guy just seemed to improve every single game. And then I watch him in the season opening game against Toronto, and he's like, everybody's saying he's like the mini Patrice Bergeron. And that's absolutely what he looks like. Like, he just looks like he's just a stud, right? And so I'm incredibly impressed with Nick Suzuki. So I think Montreal right now is the most impressive team. Calgary is only, I think I played 3 games. And Markstrom looks like he's really good. They've been crying for a goalie forever. So if he answers that, they've got some pretty good depth as well. I mean, Toronto is always going, if they decide they're going to put their heart into it, they've got the most talent. You think about those 2 games against Ottawa, right? They played half a game. They were ahead. They had the game under control, and then they just stopped playing. And then Ottawa, to their credit, came back and won the first game, right? Yeah. Second game, Toronto came to play, and it was a pretty one-sided game on Saturday night when they beat the Sens. So Toronto's got the most talent, but at the end of the day, is there heart in it to kind of overcome the rest of it? Winnipeg. I mean, they put it to the boots to the Sens the other night. So you'd have to say, and that's without Laine, right? Put Laine in that lineup is pretty good. Edmonton has been uneven, and I think Vancouver would, if I was had the biggest concern for any Canadian team right now, I think it has to be Vancouver, right? They lost some players, so there's already some question as to what they were going to be like, and early on, the indications are that those holes have been tough for them to fill. So we'll see if things turn around. Pettersson's had, I think, 1 assist in 6 games. He's way better than that. So they should come back. But I would say Montreal, most pleasant surprise. Vancouver, the most disappointing team.
Yeah. And do you think that they're going to probably stay the course as far as being able to continue to produce at that high level all season long? Or do you think that it's maybe just a case of a team like Toronto or an Edmonton, who maybe have a little bit more firepower on paper, have just gotten off to those slow starts, and by the end of 40 games in, suddenly we've got the Oilers and the Leafs and some of the teams that the experts quote unquote pick to sort of win the division sort of rise back to the top? Or do you think this is sort of Montreal's year to actually really announce that they're here to compete?
Yeah, I think most of the prognostications I had seen and read had sort of, if I had to think of on the whole, I'd say most people had predicted probably Toronto to be first, but most of the rest of them had said Montreal for second. Now you've seen some as low as 6th, right? So this is not a huge surprise to me that they're having a good start to the season. So when it's also, I don't think they're going to run away with the division. I think, but I think they've kind of shown that in the off season they had those 4 specific holes that everybody said they had to fill, right? It was somebody to spell Carey Price more often that was decent. Yeah. Right. It was a goal scoring winger like Toffoli. It was a bigger guy in Josh Anderson, and who's I've always thought is awesome. Mm-hmm. And if he's could stay healthy, and he's looked great. And then a big defenseman like Edmondson. So all 4 of those guys have come in, and they've all kind of done what they're supposed to do. So everything right now is coming up Montreal. We all know that over a long season that there's speed wobbles, there's injuries, there's Carey Price is 33, 34 years old. He's counted on as being the number 1 guy. He's had a bit of an uneven start, actually, statistically. Mm-hmm. Shea Weber is an older player. Now he's fantastic, but is he going to break down at all? You worry about the age a little bit on some of it, but I think right now, putting points in the bank right now, they can't take them away from you as the season goes on, right? So I think Montreal winning these games right now and being at the top, I think they're going to be there all season long. They're not going to go away. But I also don't think they're going to run away with it.
Yeah. It's almost easy to lose focus on the fact that there's actually 3 other divisions that are going on right now with the All-Canadian division.
Are they?
Yeah, the entire media is just focused on that North division there. But, focusing on maybe the other 3, who's a team that, has caught your attention for the right reasons maybe so far this year?
That's a great question, because you could fairly accuse me of not really paying much attention to the other divisions as well. Hockey's been going on for a week and a half now, and I think I've watched basically the Canadian division games for the most part. So if I had to think off the top of my head who's been good, it's for me, it's kind of the usual suspects, right? I think Vegas is off to a real nice start as well, but that's not a huge surprise to anybody. I think if you looked at the Western Division, that appeared to be Vegas, Colorado, St. Louis were going to be 1A, 1B, and 1C, and then there's kind of the rest. Mm-hmm. Tampa Bay always appeared to me to be kind of a real good, obviously Stanley Cup champions. Carolina is always a team I'm interested, because I like to kind of look at analytics a little bit as well, and they've always been a bit of an analytical darling, and their possession numbers and things like that have been really good mm-hmm. start of the year, and now unfortunately they've had some games canceled, they're postponed because of COVID or whatever. But Carolina to me will be an interesting team to keep your eye on if they can ever get the goaltending. The rest of it looks like it could be there for them to be. I think Svechnikov is an awesome player, and they've got a great defense, lots of depth. So I'll keep my eye on Carolina once they get back playing again. And I always thought that the East Division, the Northeast Division, whatever they're calling it, that was going to be the most interesting top to bottom, because you could argue 6 of those 8 teams could be in the top 4, from what were the Rangers going to be like this year? Well, it's kind of early, right? And we'll see what Lafreniere starts to get better. But, is Boston going to be able to, once Pastrnak comes back, are they going to take a bit of a jump because they've had a somewhat slow start to the season? Everybody likes Philly. The Islanders were great last year in the playoffs, right? So there's, is Buffalo finally going to get any better? So they've always had lots of interesting storylines to me, is the Eastern Division. I think that's probably top to bottom, maybe the most competitive division that I've seen so far.
Yeah. Well, you want to talk interesting storylines. I mean, it's come to a boiling point here last night with Pierre-Luc Dubois essentially being benched for most of the game there. And they even had an ISO cam on him. It's making the rounds on social media today there, but a less than 100% effort shift, we'll just say, was his last shift of the game there. So at this point, is it almost inevitable that he's got to be traded, and not even just traded this season, but like needs to get traded soon? And if so, where is the most likely destination he ends up?
Well, if you're a Sens fan, I would say Ottawa. I started beating that drum a couple of weeks ago that he's just like a natural fit for Ottawa. Just as far as the situation itself is concerned, I had thought at the start, when it kind of was sort of bubbling underneath the surface a little bit, that, I think, that Columbus would prefer to keep the player. He's a number 1 center, right? Though he's 22 years old. He's everything you want. You don't trade away those players. They don't come, there are some teams that wait 30 years for a number 1 center, and you've got this guy. How can you give him away? But that was after 1 or 2 games. But after last night, I mean, how do you go back from there? Like that, John Tortorella has drawn a line in the sand. It appears kind of like the player has drawn his own line in the sand, given, as you described, kind of the shift, as they're calling it right now. So, and he's put the general manager in a very difficult position, because kind of he's almost forcing the John Tortorella is almost forcing a trade to be made. And, the more the trade is forced, the tougher the position the general manager in as far as getting a return. Now, fortunately, he's such a good commodity that I think there's a lot of teams that are going to be in on him, if indeed he is going to be on the trade block. So, the more people you have in on him, the potential for your return are good. But I'm keen. When the story first came out, which I think took a lot of us by surprise just before camps opened, that he was what was the term? You wanted a bigger stage.
Yeah.
Right. You wanted a bigger stage. So you kind of think to yourself, well, like New York, LA, those are the 2 that kind of come to mind. I don't know why. And I don't think of Montreal any longer as a bigger stage, but there's sort of indications that maybe that's what a bigger stage, he's a French Canadian kid, so it makes sense. But, there's a lot of French Canadian hockey players that don't want to play in Montreal because it's such a fishbowl.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, I mean, Montreal is like, they've got, think about it. You've got a Finnish general manager in Columbus. You've got a high number 3 overall pick, which Dubois was, in Kotkaniemi, right? If you're not willing to give up Suzuki, you kind of look at it and you go, is a Kotkaniemi and a couple of other good pieces for Montreal? Because it's going to take a lot to get that guy out of there. Is that a trade that makes sense from both perspectives? I think for Montreal, man, if you had that guy and then you got Suzuki, wow, there's your center ice for the next 10 years. But you're also like, hey, we're playing awesome right now. Do we want to be shaking things up when we're playing so well right now and give up? Kotkaniemi looks like he's going to be a nice player too, but Dubois is a good player. Like, he is a proven guy. But the only thing that would stop me a little bit is just I get a little bit worried about a guy in his 4th year in the NHL who's kind of sulking his way out of town. I understand playing for John Tortorella has got to be tough, but there's a lot of other players on that team that seem to love it. So that part is a little bit of a red flag for me, that it has just deteriorated so quickly with him.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Anytime you've got a French Canadian last name, whether there's smoke and fire there or not, you're going to get linked to Montreal inevitably, right?
Yeah, so, for sure.
Would it be a huge surprise? Probably not. But and you kind of touched on it a little bit there. But do you think that Columbus, given the chance to have a do-over on it, do you think they've kind of painted themselves into a little bit of a corner here now? Whereas if they had have dealt him in the preseason before the, sulking, the taking the shift off, the lines in the sand between him and Tortorella, not that his value's fallen off a cliff by any stretch of the imagination. There's still going to be lots of teams that want him and can use him in their lineup. But do you think his value's taken maybe just a little bit of a hit, that other teams would sort of leverage the fact that they know that this is not a great situation there, and Columbus would probably be a little bit happy to move on from them? So time machine wise, would they hop in and deal in preseason, or do you think this was the inevitable thing that was going to happen no matter what?
I didn't think it would happen I thought they would get through the season, to be honest with you. I mean, he signed a 2-year deal. It was kind of like, I thought that their thinking was going to be, he's having a tough time with it right now. Let's play the season out, maybe as a change of heart. Again, we don't want to lose this guy, right?
Yeah.
But this whole thing that's gone down the last couple of days, I think is just untenable. It creates a point where there's a point of no return, quite frankly. But I mean, you read like the Pierre LeBruns of the world, and there's stories out there. I mean, we're taping this on Friday that there's up to 21 teams that have called or will be calling on him, including the Senators.
Yeah.
So you got that many teams that are interested. All you need normally is one. If you've got 21, chances are you're going to be able to play at least 2 off of them and get yourself, if you determine that you need to trade them, have to trade them, I think you're going to get a pretty good return, because guys like this just don't come up. They just don't come on the trade market ever.
Yeah.
Ever. So if they don't hit a home run in terms of the return, then that's like a fireable offense.
Yeah. So last question before we let you get out of here now. And this one's got a little bit of a local flavor to it. Given all of his success, not only with the 67s, but then also with the success and just even the rave reviews that he was getting for the coaching job he did with Team Canada at the World Juniors there, do you think that Andre Tourigny's got to be on the short list as far as if there becomes another head coaching position available, whether it's in season this season or to start next year, that he's going to be on that short list to make the jump to the NHL fairly soon?
Yeah, I think so. I think for sure. I don't think there's much not much doubt about it at all. I think there's a couple of things at play here. First of all, he has NHL experience. He's been an assistant coach with Colorado and here in Ottawa for a year as well. So he kind of knows how it works. So he's not coming in totally green like some junior hockey coaches do. But his success with the 67s, even with the last couple of years, I mean, the program they put in place here in Ottawa is outstanding. I mean, they're graduating kids left, right, and center. Every kid that comes out of there just raves about how professional the entire thing is, and he's a huge part of that. But I also think just the success, when he's been 5 times, I think now with Team Canada. His first time as the head coach, but he's been an assistant. I mean, he seems to push all the right buttons, and it's funny. He's got a very folksy manner to him. He kind of, he kind of mangles the language a little bit, but in a fun way. And he's very self-deprecating about it. And you kind of you sort of look at him and you wonder whether he looks the part and everything. But, he has this amazing ability to connect with 18-year-old hockey players. And if you can connect with an 18-year-old, you should surely be able to connect with a 23, 24, 25-year-old. So I think he's just got I think he's got a real it. So I don't think there's any doubt about it. I don't think that he would be the type of guy that you would bring in, though, as a mid-season replacement. I think he's almost in a position, I think, where he's going to be able to a little bit choose the right thing. And maybe he'd be the type of guy that you'd want to bring in to an ascending team, a team like an Ottawa or something like that, a team that's on the rise. It's got some young players. He's kind of used to coaching that way. I think he needs to be put in the right position. He's not the type of guy I would bring in necessarily to that. You've got a veteran team that's been close, and we need somebody to push us over the top. I don't know that he's got the cachet necessarily with a veteran team to come in as a coach where maybe that's going to work for him. I think he's more kind of a guy who's going to bring a team up slowly and make them better over the years. So I think he's better to kind of, in the off season, he might have it, there's always inevitably 6 or 7 openings every summer, right? Where he can take a look, and if the right situation that fits him, that he's going to be able to grow with, I think is probably what it'll end up being at the end of the day.
Yeah. So he'd be coming in and really getting his claws into a program and sort of grooming it from the start. It's sort of like maybe a Detroit or something where they've got nowhere to go but up, and there certainly aren't playoff expectations or anything there versus, say, a Boston or a Vegas or something.
Yeah. Detroit's a great example, right? And you think Steve Yzerman, Ottawa connections, maybe that makes sense at the end of the day that, Jeff Blashill's been in Detroit forever. So that would be, to me, kind of a perfect where there's a lot of patience. Steve Yzerman has meant it as much, right? This is a long haul. So Andre would probably be great for a situation like that.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, John, thank you so much for sitting down with us and talking hockey today. We really appreciate it. For those that are listening right now, where and when can people tune in and hear you?
So TSN 1200 in Ottawa, tsn1200.ca, depending on where people are watching, and iHeartRadio app, but 6 to 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday to Friday, and various other times whenever we need fill in or whatever. But yeah, that's the time that I'm on. So we get to do the Insto reaction after the Senators game the night before. So that's always lots of fun. And on mornings after nights of Thursday night when it isn't very good, still lots of people waking up angry in the morning and lots of passion, which is what we love. We didn't have anything for 10 months. Yeah. So believe me, we're more than happy to be talking about 4-0 or 4-1 losses to Winnipeg on a Thursday night in the middle of January.
Yeah. Amazing. All right. Well, John, we'll let you go and try and get some sleep before you hop back on in the morning after this West Coast swing there. And we'll talk to you later.
All right. Good to talk to you. Good luck with the podcast.